Chapter 9. Visual Basic. This chapter covers mean of Visual Basic, commonly used controls. What do you mean Visual Basic? Visual Basic, known as a high-level programming language developed from the earlier DOS version, is said to be basic. Basic signifies beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. It is a very easy programming language to learn. The codes look a bit like English language. Visual Basic is known as a visual and events-driven programming language. These are the main divergence from the old Basic. In Basic, programming is done in a text-only environment and the program is executed sequentially. In Visual Basic, programming is implemented in a graphical environment, as users can click on a definite object randomly. So every object has to be programmed freely to be able to give response to those actions, events. Hence, a Visual Basic program is made up of several subprograms. Every subprogram has its own program codes, which can be executed independently and may be linked together in one way or another at the same time. Always remember, Visual Basic 1.0 on May 1991 was released for Windows at the Comdex/Windows World Trade Show in Atlanta, Georgia. The Visual Basic environment. On startup, Visual Basic 6.0 will show the following dialog box as displayed in the figure. You may choose to start a new project, open an existing project, or select a list of recently opened programs. A project is a collection of files that make up your application. There are different kinds of applications we may create. However, we would focus on creating standard EXE programs. EXE means executable program. Now click on the standard EXE icon to go into the real VB programming environment. Always remember, various software companies produced various versions of Basic like Microsoft QBasic, Quick Basic, GW Basic, IBM Basic, and so on. Event-driven programming. Visual Basic is based on event-driven programming. This is slightly different if you have programmed in either or Pascal. The first question is, what is an event? In Visual Basic programming, an event is code applied to handle some response inside a control. This is generally termed event handler routines. The event is started by user action. For example, click, mouse move, load, mouse up, etc. Every object has its own set of events associated with it. The event can be as simple as the user clicking an object with a mouse. The Visual Basic Integrated Development Environment. Visual Basic is known as a high-level programming paradigm. Its concepts are based upon event-driven programming. The environment to edit, write, and delete code as well as develop Windows-based applications is called the Integrated Development Environment, IDE. The development environment for Visual Basic is shown in the given figure below. The toolbar. Visual Basic supports multiple toolbars, which are divided into three main toolbars: Standard Toolbar, Edit Toolbar, Debug Toolbar. You may customize the toolbar by clicking the right mouse button of the toolbar and selecting Customize and altering the options you need. The components and diagram of the standard toolbar are shown as following. Facts to learn. The errors in calculations surface only because of incorrect input by human users. The toolbox. The following diagram displays the main tools that come up on the standard toolbox window. You may add additional controls to the toolbox as your requirements grow. The form window. The form window is your preliminary work area where the visual development of the application is modified or created. Although the form window first appears small relative to the rest of the screen, the form window includes the background of the application. The form window displays the main body of the application. The form can be resized to take up the width of the screen. The code window. The form window holds the program's interactive objects. To view the code for the form window or any object, we may select View Code. The code window is a little more than a text editor with which you write the programming statements that tie the application together. An alternative technique to view the code is to double-click anywhere on the form or the object and view the code for that specific object. The diagram displays the code window for the form. The Project Explorer window. The Project Explorer window, often known as the project window, provides you a tree-structured view of all the files in the application. The Project Explorer window shows forms, modules, files that hold supporting code for the application, classes, advanced modules, and much more. The Properties window. The property window represents an object's associated properties. Every property of a control like a label, command button, etc. has its own unique set of properties. Various lists come up in the Properties window each time you click over a various form window object. The Properties window explains properties, functional and descriptive information regarding the form and its controls. Several properties exist for almost each object in Visual Basic. Commonly used controls. Label controls. A label control is primarily used to show information onto a form. By default, any label positioned on a form is known as Label 1, Label 2, 3, 4, etc. A label is positioned on the form by selecting the label icon from the toolbox control. The label consists of its own set of properties associated with the object label control. Following is the list of properties of a label. Always remember, programming in VB is a combination of visually arranged components or controls on a form, specifying attributes and actions for those components, and writing additional lines of code for more functionality. Property description. Caption property is to hold the textual appearance of the object. The label control may answer to a full set of events, however, the label control does not receive user input. Therefore, it does not answer to events like key press. Following is an example of the code used to alter the caption property of a label. Label1.caption is equal to double quotes hello. Alter caption property. Label1 dot font bold is equal to true. Add bold property. Label1 dot font size is equal to 12. Alter font size property. Text comes up as hello. Facts to learn. A property's data type and principal access level are defined in the property statement and not in the property procedures. A property can have only one data type. For example, you cannot define a property to store a decimal value but retrieve a double value. Text box. The text box is utilized to permit the user to enter some input. The input may be utilized to enter values to match the needed specification. Text boxes are probably the most significant controls that are utilized while evolving applications. They permit the user to interact with the application and obtain the application to answer in accordance with the parameters set by the input. Name. The name property recognizes a text box when writing the program. Text. The property consists of the text which is shown in the text box. Font. This property is utilized to set the maximum length of text that may be entered in a text box. Max length. This property decides if the text will be shown in a single line or multiple lines in the text box. Command buttons. Command buttons are different to labels and text boxes. They are utilized in the event of user response to accept responses or navigate through forms. The most usually event procedure associated with the command button is the click event. A command button is positioned on the form. The reason of having this object is that once the user has completed entering their name, they can click on the command button to give control back to the application. Name. The name property recognizes a command button when writing the program. Caption. This property consists of the text which is shown on the command button. Font. This property sets the font style, font size, etc. for the command button. The picture box. The picture box is one of the controls that is utilized to handle graphics. You may load a picture during the designing phase by clicking on the picture item in the Properties window and selecting the picture from the selected folder. You may also load the picture at runtime utilizing the load picture method. For example, this statement will load the picture grape.gif into the picture box. Picture1.picture is equal to load picture C: Visual Basic Program /images /grape.gif. The image in the picture box is not resizable. The image box. The image box is another control that handles pictures and images. It acts almost identically to the picture box. However, there is one big difference. The image in an image box is stretchable, which signifies it can be resized. This characteristic is not available in the picture box. Similar to the picture box, the load picture method may also be utilized. For example, this statement loads the picture grape.gif into the image box. Image1.picture is equal to load picture C: Visual Basic Program /images /grape.gif. Steps in building a Visual Basic application. Usually, there are 3 basic steps in building a Visual Basic application. The steps are as following. Step 1. Design the interface. Step 2. Set the properties of the controls, objects. Step 3. Write the events, procedures. Adding controls to the form. Click on any control in the toolbox and bring the pointer to the form. The pointer will alter to a plus symbol. Move the pointer to the desired place and drag it to draw the selected control. The control will be positioned on the form. Always remember, Visual Basic can create executables, exe files, ActiveX controls, or DLL files, but is primarily used to develop Windows applications and to interface database systems. Writing code for an event. Every object or control in Visual Basic can generally run several types of procedures or events. These events are listed in the drop-down list in the code window, which is shown while you click on the procedures box after double-clicking on an object. To begin writing an event procedure, you require to double-click an object. For example, when you double-click on the command button, the code will come up showing an event procedure. Private subcommand 1_click. Key in your program code here. And sub. You then require to write the between statements in the 2 pre-written lines of code. The program code is made up of a number of statements that set certain properties trigger off some actions. The syntax of Visual Basic's program code is almost like English, though not exactly the same, so it is very easy to learn. The syntax to assign certain values to it or to set the property of an object where property and object are isolated by a period is object property. For example, the statement form1show signifies to show the form with the name form1. Label1 visible is equal to true means label1 is set to be visible. Text1.text is equal to Visual Basic is to assign the text Visual Basic to the text box with the name text1. text2.text is equal to 100 is to assign a value of 100 to the text box with the name text2, and timer1.enabled is equal to false is to disable the timer with the name timer1, and so on. Let's look at the following examples. Example 1. Private subcommand 1 underscore click parentheses. Label 1 dot visible is equal to false. Label 2 dot visible is equal to true. Text 1 dot text is equal to double quotes, you are correct, and sub. Example 2. Private subcommand 1 underscore click parentheses. Label 1 dot caption is equal to double quotes welcome. Image 1 dot visible is equal to true, and sub. Always remember, Alan Cooper created the drag and drop design for the user interface of Visual Basic. Executing a Visual Basic project. From the menu bar, click Run, Start, or key F5 may be pressed to directly run the project. To stop the execution and return back to the editing mode, click the Cancel or Close button. Summary. Visual Basic, known as high-level programming language developed from the earlier DOS version, is said to be basic. Basic signifies beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. It is fairly an easy programming language to learn. Visual Basic is known as a high-level programming paradigm. Its concepts are based upon event-driven programming. Command buttons are different to labels and text boxes. They are utilized in the event of user answers to navigate through forms or accept responses. The image box is another control that handles pictures and images. A label control is utilized primarily to show information onto a form. The form window is your preliminary work area where the visual development of the application is modified or created. Visual Basic supports multiple toolbars which are divided into three main areas: Standard toolbar, Edit toolbar, Debug